Gisbergen is signing a multi-year contract extension with Trackhouse Racing, and Brent might be moving up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR Nerd Motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by taking a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Justin Haley's 2025 Gainbridge Super League scheme that we'll see later this year. Honestly, I think the scheme looks really decent. I think the Spires has some really nice looking paint schemes. This one does look solid in my opinion. I like the colors overall. Not as interesting as the Gainbridge one they normally have, but I think it does look alright. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2025 Alternate Rebel Bourbon scheme that we'll see later this year. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of this one. I think the normal Rebel Bourbon car actually looks really good. This one just doesn't really have any good details to it to me. It doesn't look really good. It's way too plain. The black looks alright, but the color doesn't look too great in some areas, and the number don't look great on the car either. It's an alright car, but it's not amazing. I think the other Rebel Bourbon car is a much better car than this one, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bill Murray. As it was announced on Thursday that Bill Murray will give the command for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Gateway and will be the Grand Marshal for the event. Bill Murray also will be performing at the Confluence Festival as well, along with John Party and Ella Langley. I think it's really exciting. Bill Murray, an iconic actor who, of course, is on Ghostbusters and many other iconic movies over the last 40 years. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job, and I think it makes a lot of sense to bring someone in who is part of the Confluence Festival, give him the chance and opportunity to give the command. I don't know if Bill Murray's ever given the command before, so this is a really good opportunity for him. I think it's cool he'll get the chance, and I think it's cool that he'll get the opportunity to give the command for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Gateway. Really exciting and really great stuff, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen once again. Now, earlier today, Shane Van Gisbergen put up a dominating clinic and won his fourth NASCAR Cup Series race in 2025 and his fifth career NASCAR Cup Series win. He has won 4 races this year, and get this, as a rookie. He has now got the most wins for a driver that is going for the Rookie of the Year honors ever and has won the most races as a rookie in the season. On top of that as well, as NASCAR Man reported as well, his win from Watkins Glen is the largest margin of victory for Watkins Glen since 1987 when Rusty Wallace won by about 11 or 12 seconds. He is also, I believe, the only driver in Cup Series history on road courses that has had margin of victory of 10 or more seconds twice in a season. What Shane Van Gisbergen has been doing this year on road courses has been absolutely phenomenal. 4 wins as a rookie. We all knew coming into this year that SVG was going to be really, really good on the road courses this year. He's absolutely delivered, done a fantastic and really good job, and his numbers are just absolutely amazing. So for him to continue doing that, I think it's been amazing to see. Congratulations to Shane Van Gisbergen on continuing to put up some really strong and really good numbers, and I think he's going to continue winning a lot of races. He is absolutely the favorite to win the Charlotte Roval, and I think he's going to win a lot of road course races over the course of the next couple years and next couple of seasons as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the IndyCar race from Portland. While the NASCAR Cup Series race is finishing up from Watkins Glen, you had the IndyCar race in Portland that was beginning. Now, the first few minutes of the race on FS1, because I believe Live Golf was going on during the time, but the broadcast came in on lap number 6, and Pat O'Ward, who won the pole, had the race lead while they were under caution. But unfortunately for Pat O'Ward, he would have mechanical issues and electrical gremlins early in the event and would fall out of contention and would lose a chance and opportunity to win the championship. This would mean you have a 3-way battle for the overall win and victory between Will Power, Christian Lundgaard, and Alex Palou, who were all in different strategies throughout the day. And Alex Palou was coming up very fast. He was really good on the red tires, had the newer, fresh red tires to get a chance and an opportunity to get up there. And Christian Lundgaard also was doing a really good job in this event. But at the end of the day, Will Power had a fantastic and amazing car, and Will Power held off a hard-charging Christian Lundgaard and Alex Palou to pick up his first IndyCar win of this season. And with Alex Palou finishing third, he has won his 3rd straight IndyCar championship and his 4th IndyCar championship over the last 5 years. What Alex Palou has done has been absolutely incredible in IndyCar this year to get another championship. I think that is phenomenal. He has been the guy to beat this year. Yes, he probably will not break the record for most wins in IndyCar season, but Palou has absolutely earned the championship, and also very good news for Will Power as well to win the race in IndyCar, considering he may not even be back with Penske next year. I think it's absolutely huge to see him go out there and win this event. Congratulations to him on winning a well-deserved win for Will Power, and congratulations to Alex Palou on winning his third straight IndyCar championship. Congratulations to both drivers on making their own history and going and picking up wins and victories as well. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2025 Knoxville Nationals. Now, after the NASCAR Xfinity Series race concluded from Watkins Glen, you had the Knoxville Nationals going on. And this race had one guy that dominated the whole entire race, and that was Ryan Timms. Unfortunately, Kyle Larson was up front early in the race. Kyle Larson, who actually won a prelim night, I believe it was on Wednesday, he unfortunately got caught up in an incident in wreck, and I think one of the tires came off the car. But the guy who ended up winning the race would be Ryan Timms. Ryan Timms, an 18-year-old driver who's been exceptional as a young talent in the sport. I believe would lead every single lap and be one of the youngest drivers to ever win the Knoxville Nationals. Congratulations to Ryan Timms on getting it done, especially for someone who I think is on Denny Hamlin's radar. He could be someone down the road who could come to NASCAR. We've seen some drivers like Kyle Larson, Corey Day, who have transitioned from doing dirt racing over the last couple years, and I think that Ryan Timms is someone who is not an exception to this. I think he's really, really talented. The kid's really, really good. And to win at just the age of 18, the Knoxville Nationals, one of the toughest races to go out there and win. I think that's absolutely amazing. Once again, congratulations to Ryan on winning the Knoxville Nationals this year. A well-earned and well-deserved victory for him. We'll see if he wins more of these down the road and more dirt races in his motorsports career. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott. Now, it was posted by the NASCAR Insights account, I believe it was on Thursday, a really impressive set. Through 23 races, this was before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place at Watkins Glen. Through 23 races of the season, Chase Elliott has only finished one lap down throughout the whole entire season and has only had one lap he has not finished throughout the whole entire season so far. He is the only driver in the modern era to do that twice. Not once, but twice. He actually did it last year in 2024 as well. Chase Elliott, say what you want to say about him as a driver going out there contending for wins, and today was not his best run at Watkins Glen, but for him to continue to put up incredible numbers, I think that's absolutely impressive. To have 23 or 24 races and only have one lap down throughout the whole entire season, be so consistent, only have one finish outside the top 20 in the last 20 or 29 races, by the way. I think that's also incredible. So for Chase, that is absolutely amazing. Chase has been so good to being super consistent. He's been really good about the consistency for him. Congratulations to Chase on continuing to put up really consistent numbers and continuing to put up some incredible stats in NASCAR Cup competition. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Team Penske. With Ryan Blaney winning the pole for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Watkins Glen, he picked up the 150th pole for Team Penske in the NASCAR Cup Series. This is only the fourth team in NASCAR Cup competition that has reached 150 poles. I believe the other teams are Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, and I believe maybe RCR, but I'm not entirely sure who the other team was. I think that Penske, say what you want to say, that was Blaney's first pole. It's impressive for him to pole considering how good Shane Van Gisbergen has been. Of course, he dominated the race, but he's been really, really good at qualifying at times. We know they've been really good at super speedway qualifying, but to win your 150th pole on a road course nonetheless, the first time he's won a pole at Watkins at a road course since Circuit of the Americas last couple years ago, back to 2022. I think that's absolutely impressive. So 150 poles for Team Penske. Congratulations to that team on getting it done. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. I think that's absolutely incredible as well that they continue doing pretty impressive things at the Penske group. They're still, of course, looking to win another championship at this point, but pretty impressive to see Penske now have 150 poles in the NASCAR Cup Series. A pretty awesome and incredible accomplishment, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about F1 TV. As was reported by Adam Stern on Thursday early morning, that F1 TV, according to Stefano Domenicali, who is the CEO of the FIA and Formula One, says that F1 TV will continue in the United States in 2026. They did not say how long the contract is going to be for the new rights for that, because it could be a short-term deal, according to what was reported by Adam Stern, but it will continue in the United States in 2026. This is really good news considering there's been a lot of rumors and speculation that F1 may be going to Apple TV for next year. That's what a lot of people think. There was talk maybe it could go to another network and maybe ESPN could keep it. But of course, it's been reported now that ESPN will not be keeping the rights to Formula One going because of the asking price and the asking range. And everyone does expect it is going to go to Apple TV next year. So because of that, they were looking to maybe have 2 streaming networks with Apple TV, and many thought that F1 TV was not going to continue in 2026. But we now know for sure that it's been confirmed it will be sticking around at least for next year. Now, it could have just be a 1-year deal where it's only around for 1 year and then it goes away. That is certainly a possibility, but I also think there's a chance and possibly that it could last a lot longer than that at this point. We're just going to have to kind of wait and see how long it does exactly last in the United States, because again, I think there's a chance and possibility that things could personally change for sure for the network, and see if that will continue. Again, it doesn't really move the needle on how many people do watch Formula One races. I know some people will try to claim, oh, it does change things overall, but I really don't think it changes a lot at this point. I know some will disagree, but I don't personally think it will change a lot on that front. I just think it's good to see the Formula One TV will continuing in the United States for a little bit, and will stay playing in the United States networks at least for the foreseeable future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tristan McKee. As Tristan McKee made history in ARCA. As Tristan McKee, at just the young age of 15 years old, in like 2 or 3 days or something like that, has won his first ever ARCA race at Watkins Glen. Going back to the event, Tristan McKee was around 2nd or 3rd most of the day. The guy who we'll talk about a little bit, Brent, he of course was continuing to dominate the event. We knew Brent was going to be the favorite to pick up the win in victory, considering how good Brent has been when it comes to racing in ARCA. He's been extremely dominant at road courses. Of course, is a Trans Am TA2 champion and has been exceptional on road courses and has done a really good job. But Tristan McKee was in 2nd position, and unfortunately late in this race, after caution came out for Jason Kitzmiller, who crashed into the inside barrier in turn number 1 going up into turn number 2, unfortunately Brent had an electrical gremlin and issue. It seemed like the battery might have unfortunately went dead for Brent, and Tristan McKee took advantage of that and would get the race lead. Now, Tyler Reif and Chris Wright would try to do anything they could to get by Tristan McKee for the win, but they would not have anything for him, as Tristan McKee would come off the corner and at just the age of 15 years old would pick up the win. And keep in mind, he's almost born in 2011. He just turned 15 years old, and there's a lot of people that are really high on this guy. He is, of course, a Spire development driver. There's been some controversy around the guy in the way he races, but we all gotta remember one thing. Tristan McKee is just 15 years old, and as he does get older, I think he's going to mature as a race car driver, and I think he's going to grow as a race car driver in the sport as well. For him to go out there at just a young age of 15 years old and go out there and win nonetheless, I think that's absolutely amazing for someone at a young age to do that. The only other driver maybe younger than him, I believe, is Todd Gillen, who won in 2015 when he picked up a win. But for Tristan to do it at 15 years old, who just made his ARCA debut, we don't even know how many more races he's got scheduled this year. We know he's going to run an ARCA West race at the end of the season, but he can't run a lot of main ARCA races considering he just turned 15. But I think it's so phenomenal to see what he's doing currently at the moment at just a very young age. Congratulations to him on winning his first ever ARCA race. A well-deserved victory. Yes, Brent probably should have won the race, but for Tristan to get it done, it's well-earned and well-deserved. Good to see him go out there and pick up the win and pick up the victory. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Austin Cindric. As there was a report a couple days ago back, I believe going into Friday, that Tick4 Racing has confirmed that they are in talks with Austin Cindric about doing that wildcard entry that is supposed to take place in the Adelaide Grand Final at the end of the year. Of course, we talked about this on the channel a couple days back, but there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation that many NASCAR drivers have been trying to run this Adelaide Grand Final and run this event at the end of the year. There was talk about Kyle Busch doing it in 2024, but unfortunately that deal fell through because of certain reasons. And originally Kyle Larson was going to be the driver who was going to get behind it, I believe, for the top Chevrolet team. I'm pretty sure, not exactly sure which team it was going to be because there were some big changes that are happening in the Chevy camp, I'm pretty sure. But Larson was about to have a deal signed for the end of the year with one of the top Chevy teams, and unfortunately that deal fell through. A big reason for that is because the unfortunate fail of the Indy Coke 600 double. Had things gone through for that and things had not become an issue, I think Larson absolutely would have done the double, or actually done this event, but of course he's not doing it. And now we are expecting that Austin Cindric will likely be the driver to do this. Austin Cindric is someone who, in my opinion, is a solid road course racer. I know some will disagree, considering he's not been absolutely amazing at road course in the next-gen era, but Austin Cindric's won a lot of road course races in Xfinity competition, and from time to time can put up some decent and solid numbers. And I think it'd be really cool to see him race against the likes of Brock Feeney, who just won the Sprint Cup championship there. Race against guys like Brody Kosecki, who've been really good. Race against guys like Will Brown, for example, and Cam Waters and Thomas Randall. And other guys like maybe Jack Perkins, who have expressed interest in racing in NASCAR in some way, shape, or form. I think that it would be amazing for Cindric to do this, and I really hope that this ends up coming through, because I want to see NASCAR drivers do more crossovers, just like a lot of the supercar guys coming over and racing in NASCAR, like Will Brown, like Jack Perkins, like maybe Brock Feeney in the future, like Brody Kosecki, you name it, Cam Waters. All these guys have come over and done the supercar crossover to NASCAR. I think NASCAR drivers going and doing this crossover was something that I absolutely would love to see at this point. So I hope this deal ends up going through. I really hope it ends up happening because I want to see it happen for sure. And I think it'd be really good for the sport for a crossover like that to happen. So I hope it ends up going through. I hope it ends up happening. And I really hope we get to see an opportunity for us to see Austin Cindric go there and race. I think he'll probably do a decent job considering the equipment he's in. We'll see if he can run really well in that event because it sounds like it's probably going to happen if things can get signed up. We'll see if it does end up happening, though, later this year at the end of the season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cole Butcher. As it was announced earlier this evening that Cole Butcher will make his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut this weekend in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race in Richmond. He will drive the number 62 for Halmer Friesen Racing. If you've never heard the name of Cole Butcher, this is a guy, in my opinion, who is a pretty solid short track racer. He has won multiple races in ASA. I think he's won some massive races in the ASA as well, and has been competing in the ASA over the course of the last couple of years, has been racing for quite some time. And he's a really good short track racer. And he's going to be joining up with a team that's going to have another really good short track racer, that being Caden Honeycutt, who of course is substituting for Stuart Friese, who unfortunately had a scary crash and a scary incident not too long ago. And this will also be the first time we've seen the 62 truck on the racetrack on a non-road course. We've seen Wesley Slip make a couple starts on the road course this year. He did score a top 15 finish. And I think for someone like Cole Butcher, who in my opinion is a good short track guy, I think he's going to have a solid chance and an opportunity to be pretty competitive, because the Halmer Friesen Racing team, while they've not been up front always contending for wins every week, I think this in the 62 truck had some issues at Lime Rock. I think because Cole Butcher knows how to race on short tracks, I think that's going to be a major advantage for him, because short track guys who come into newer equipment, they tend to get up to speed very quickly, and I expect the same for Cole Butcher going into this event at Richmond, because you're going to have a lot of competition, but also at the same time, you're not going to have a massive amount of competition in this race. Corey Heim's going to be good. Lane Riggs, who I think is one of the favorites to win, he's going to be good. Ty Majeski's a good short track guy. Even Roger Croup is pretty good. You're going to have a lot of really good short track racers in this event, so he's going to have some really good competition for sure. But I love seeing short track guys like him get the chance and opportunity. I hope he is really fast. I hope he's really competitive, and I hope he does have a solid chance and a great opportunity to pick up the win, because I think it'd be cool to see him go to victory lane for Stewart. We'll see if it happens, and we'll see if he does get that chance and opportunity to be really competitive with the Halmer Friesen Racing team on Friday night at Richmond Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Teresa Earnhardt. As it was reported by Adam Stern during the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Watkins Glen, which, trust me, we got some stuff to talk about from that race. It was reported by Adam Stern that Mooresville, North Carolina is set to deny rezoning requests for a $30 billion data center that was supposed to take place on Dale Earnhardt's farm. They are not a big fan of it, and they are going ahead and denying that thing from happening. So Teresa Earnhardt has been really trying to get this $30 billion data center basically up in Dale Earnhardt's conservation area that he had for a very long time. And she wanted to build a data center to bring in a lot of money into the area, mainly just so she can get a lot of money in her greedy pocket at this point. Well, people from Mooresville, North Carolina can absolutely see what she's doing, and they're like, no, you're not doing this. You're not going to screw everything up and cause a lot of havoc, because one of the big things that could become a major factor is if you have like a data center in your area, even if it's a lot of money, and probably she'll get a lot of that money, a lot of that can create a lot of hassle and a lot of havoc for the people in the area. And a lot of people in the Mooresville area, from what I know, they don't want things to get screwed up. They want things to kind of stay normal, and they don't want things to change, because things changing like this is something they're not a major fan of. So I'm really glad that the people from Mooresville and the government there is making the right decision here. I don't want to see something like that get screwed up, and I don't want to see a data center built in. We don't need more data centers in this country at this point right now. And I know Teresa's a lot older at this point, and people are going to want to see her get the chance and opportunity to do what she wants to do. But I think at this point, for her, I don't want to see anything like that happen. I really hope that anything that she wants gets denied at this one. She's not a good person. She's an evil woman. She's done a lot of bad things overall, and I personally hope that everything that she wants to get done gets denied. Glad to see Mooresville denying it at this point and not letting her get her way and doing what she wants to do, because she don't deserve to get to do anything, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR 25. Now, we've had some interesting updates in regards to NASCAR 25 over the course of the last day or so. So on Thursday, the next Dev Diary number 5, was officially released, and they got a lot of drivers to be part of this. Laney Bice was part of this, William Byron was part of the video, LeVar Scott was part of it, I believe Eloy Falcon I saw in the video, Christopher Bell was part of the video, Roger Kroof was there as well. I believe Sammy Smith was part of the video as well, and a lot of other people got the chance and opportunity to pick up and play the game. Now, we didn't get a lot of gameplay in the video, which is something I think a lot of fans have been asking for at this point, is them to show some gameplay. Matt Lewis has been doing a lot of the dev diaries and helping out on that front. He says that a lot of people are really begging for gameplay fully to be released, and he says it'll probably be coming in the next month or so, and probably that'll be coming in the next, probably around, like, I'm guessing September 8th or 9th is probably when they're going to release some sort of gameplay, or maybe at the end of the month at Daytona is my guess, or could come around Bristol weekend, which is certainly interesting. But for some of the gameplay footage that we see here, I gotta say, you can actually see a little bit of it, and from what I can see here, it's really tough to see. But I will say what I can see here is actually really good. It does look really good. You're in the in-car. The quality of it does look good. And from what I also noticed as well, the AI is not following a train like we saw with NASCAR 21 Ignition. They're running multiple different lines and grooves, which I think that's a major positive. And from what a lot of the drivers are saying, though they may be getting paid at this point, we're not sure. That's just their opinion. I do believe that there is at least some hope with this game. I've said this from time to time. Yes, I think there's a lot of positive things to look at, and I'm definitely excited for this game. But I also want to remind everybody, I think you need to come into this game with a cautiously optimistic approach. Because remember NASCAR 21 Ignition. NASCAR 21 Ignition is arguably the worst NASCAR game, maybe is the worst NASCAR game ever released. And there was a lot of things there were a lot of red flags that were coming out. I am not noticing the same red flags at this point that I noticed with NASCAR 21 Ignition. So I think that's at least a little bit of positive at the moment. Is there a possibility this game could be bad? There definitely is a possibility, but I do trust iRacing more than other companies, and it's probably not going to be absolutely a perfect game. I think people have way too high of expectations for this game, but I also think people just want a game that's good. For me, the game needs to play really good. It needs to be working properly like NASCAR 21 was not. It needs to be a working proper game, and that's all I think we want at this particular moment of point. If the game is working properly, I think that's the biggest thing, and the physics need to be good. That's the other thing I'm kind of looking for at this point with NASCAR 25. If it can be like that, that'd be a positive. We got about a month till the game is released, so I'm excited about that. We're not too far away from the game coming out a couple months from now. I believe October 14th is when the game does release, so about 2 months from now, and we should be getting more stuff in the future. I like what I'm seeing. There's still some stuff, there might be some concerns in some areas, but I do like a lot what I'm seeing. There's some promise and there's some potential with this game for sure. We'll just see if the game ends up being good. We'll wait for the gameplay and more stuff to be released around this game really soon. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brad Keselowski and Carson Hocevar. Now, during the NASCAR Cup Series race at Watkins Glen, there was an incident that was brought up from qualifying earlier this weekend. Apparently, during NASCAR Cup Series qualifying at Watkins Glen, Carson Hocevar got into another incident with another driver. So as they were coming back down pit road after the qualifying session had concluded, Brad Keselowski got out of his car and was really angry and upset. Apparently, Brad Keselowski was mad at Carson Hocevar because Carson, according to him, had impeded him during the qualifying session, and Brad ran faster than I think we've seen him in quite some time, and went up to his window and basically told him, "What are you doing? What is going on there?" And then the Spire pit crew basically said, "Brad, you interfered with us. You caused issues with us in our qualifying session. You impeded with our qualifying session." It was the other way around. We weren't impeding with your qualifying session. You impeded with our qualifying session and really screwed our qualifying session up. There's another driver, though, that Carson Osbar has made upset. Now, I can't really tell until we see the qualifying footage on who messed up what. There really hasn't been a release of that footage. But it seems like Carson Osbar is continuing to make a lot of drivers upset. I know he made that funny troll post on Instagram, I'm pretty sure it was, which I found a little bit funny, saying, get in line at this point. Now, Brad Keselowski's probably going to be in line on that list at this moment. I expect Carson Osbar to probably talk about it on the stream in the next day or so, considering Carson Osbar, even after the Mexico incident, is still putting on some streams, and I gotta say, he does provide a lot of insight throughout those streams. But I find it funny that Carson, it seems like every single week, we're talking about some sort of incident with Carson Osbar. It doesn't matter how big it is or small, and there's a lot of times where things get crazy, because there was a lot of interesting comments and service between him and Zane Smith this week, and where actually Carson went up to the window after the race today, and he basically said that I'm letting you get one of the spots back, and this is something we're going to do the next couple of weeks. Maybe Carson trying to show a little bit of gesture, show a little bit of friendliness at this point. Maybe it's casual friendliness, I don't know. But maybe Carson's learning that I don't need to be super, super aggressive in those situations. But it's interesting we got beef between Brad Keselowski, Carson Hocevar. It's another driver getting upset. We've seen guys like Kyle Busch get upset with him. We've seen Ryan Blaney not be happy. We've seen Ross Chastain, who's been teammates with him in Nice at certain points, not be happy. I think even people like Connor Zolcic kind of called him out. Even Shane Van Gisbergen, who won the Cup Series race earlier today, kind of called him out on the radio as well. So interesting stuff for sure nonetheless, and kind of interesting to see that Brad Keselowski and Carson Hocevar got into it once again. It's not shocking and surprising, though, considering that those two have had a little bit of history over the years. Not so shocking, well, not a lot of history, but have had issues, it seems like, in the past in some situations. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Project 91. Now, there have been a lot of questions surrounding Project 91 over the course of the last couple months, because we thought we'd be seeing Project 91 a lot more in 2025, when it was announced that Project 91 would be returning for the 2025 season, for the 2025 Daytona 500 for Elio Castroneves to make his NASCAR Cup Series debut. He had Wendy's as a sponsorship during that race, and unfortunately got caught up in a couple incidents and crashes throughout the weekend. He got a top 5 in the ARCA race, but got caught up in a couple wrecks that really weren't his fault throughout the weekend. And there was talk that we were going to see Project 91 in a lot more races in the future, maybe along with Elio Castroneves. And they were asked questions about that. Well, Justin Marks did confirm that Project 91 is something that we still do want to do in the near future. Probably could do it in the not so distant future as well. But our main focus currently at the moment is trying to make sure that we can get all 3 of our cars up to speed and running a lot better, not just on the road courses, but all other types of tracks as well. I think that's the best thing at this point. I absolutely would love to see Project 91 come back, but we got to look at that from that perspective. Project 91, the big thing is that is a car that it's technically the 87 car that Connor Zolcic is running. We've seen Darian Grubb be the crew chief of that car. This technically is that car, right? But I think that we all would love to see this car come back and make more starts once again. And I certainly think there is a solid chance and possibly that something like that could happen again in the future. If it does come back, I would love to see a driver like Marcus Ambrose get a chance and an opportunity. Maybe someone like a Valentino Rossi. Could maybe we see some supercar guys like, I don't know, a Scott McLaughlin come in and race, because Scott has driven for Trackhouse Racing in the Rolex 24 in that Trackhouse Racing TF course number 91 Corvette that they ran. I could certainly see that being a possibility at this point. But they got to get the Trackhouse cars fully up to speed before that. Yes, they've been great at road courses, but the other types of tracks, they have struggled for sure. But I would love to see other guys like maybe a Sebastian Vettel, maybe a Jenson Button gets a chance and opportunity, and maybe someone like a Max Verstappen down the road if Max ever wants to do it, considering the Red Bull connection at this point. We could see that in the future. But it's good to see that they're talking about bringing the Project 91 project back. I really hope it happens here soon, because I think it'd be really good for the sport for that car to be back on the racetrack. We'll see if it does return, and we'll see if it does come back here really soon. I think there's absolutely a chance that it could happen currently at the moment, but we're not entirely sure when that car will return to the track. I think it's just kind of up in the air when that can return, and we'll see if they bring it back here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 23XI Racing and Front Row Motorsports lawsuit once again. This is going to be a very short update. There was some stuff that was released around the lawsuit. There's been a lot of updates on the lawsuit, not too many as of late, but obviously we know 23XI and Front Row are suing NASCAR on antitrust claims. And NASCAR over the weekend, I believe it was on Friday or Saturday, filed a response to 2011 in Front Row Motorsports on basically the sanctions coming in. According to Bob Cox and other reporters in the industry, NASCAR filed motion should show why they shouldn't be sanctioned for them coordinating with drivers, that being the teams of 2011 in Front Row Motorsports, and they provided around 20,000 documents. According to what NASCAR is saying, they provided around 20,000 documents to people involved, showing that there was a lot of stuff going on at this point. As more evidence comes out around the 2011 in Front Row Motorsports lawsuit, I still think the teams have a decent shot to win, but NASCAR does have some decent leverage here in the 2011 in Front Row Motorsports lawsuit. Obviously, we're still waiting on what's going to happen, the preliminary injunction at this point. I think some of this is kind of busy work at this point with the 2011 in Front Row Motorsports lawsuit. I think the big decision now is to wait on what happens with preliminary injunction, because once again, 2011 Front Row did file for another preliminary injunction. They will get a decision in a couple months. I think that decision is coming in about 2 or 3 weeks from now. As a matter of fact, I think it's going to be happening at Daytona, so about a week from now, actually, we should be getting a decision on that front. And if they do end up losing the preliminary injunction hearing, there's a very good chance and possibility that that particular moment and point that NASCAR could go and sell those charters. There's a chance he could sell it to teams like Legacy Motor Club, but does want to become a 3-car team in the future. Obviously, other organizations like RFK would probably love to have a third charter, officially not be a lease charter, but have a third charter officially in their arsenal. And there's some other teams that certainly would love to have a third charter. Obviously, Rick Ware, who's in a lawsuit, and with TJ Pusher coming in to purchase team and organization, they absolutely probably would love to see it at that point. I'm going to be interested to see what happens at that particular point. I've been kind of frustrated with all this lawsuit stuff at this point. I think the lawsuit between Legacy and Rick Ware and all the stuff around TJ Pusher, I think that is certainly interesting. Obviously, there's some other silly scene stuff could be coming very soon that could help Legacy Motor Club get a third charter. There, of course, is talk that Legacy could get that third charter from the Haas factory team in the future. They could buy or lease the organization or merge the organization into their team. I find that to be very interesting at this point. So we'll see what happens with that lawsuit coming up very, very soon, and we'll see if things come up from that front. But we got an update on the lawsuit with Michael Jordan, other things. Obviously, people like Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, Riley Herbst, Noah Gragson, all of them are so kind of waiting on what their future is going to look like here really soon. We'll just see what happens around that coming up very soon and see what more information can be released in the 2011 in Front Row Motorsports in the near and not so distant future and in the coming weeks as well. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilisch. Now, there are a couple Connor Zilisch stories to discuss tonight on the channel. The first one is unfortunately around the injury. So, Connor Zilisch, of course, picked up his 6th Xfinity Series win of 2025 on Saturday evening and picked up his 7th career Xfinity Series win and 5 wins in the last 11 races. So, he had dominated the race. Of course, the race took an extra hour because there was a big crash that took place that we'll talk about here in just a short little bit with Austin Hill and Michael McDowell being involved in that incident wreck. As he was getting up to celebrate all the sponsorship stuff on the car, Connor Zilisch unfortunately slipped, I believe on the window netting, I'm pretty sure, and unfortunately he slapped his leg a little bit and unfortunately hit the concrete and the asphalt as well. He laid there for a few seconds. He was awake and alert according to people that were transporting him from the ambulance. He was picked up and brought into the infield care center where they transported him to a local hospital. There was, of course, some statements that were released after what happened. Unfortunately, he was injured from the situation there at Watkins Glen. It was confirmed that his CT scan was clear and there were no issues on the CT scan, no head injuries or like concussions or anything like that. But unfortunately for Connor Jones, he does have a broken collarbone. They, of course, confirmed that they would not be running the 87 car for Watkins Glen. That car did not run earlier tonight in the NASCAR Cup Series race, which I think it would have had a chance and an opportunity to go out there and win. Some were kind of wondering why the 87 car was not running. You got to think about the sponsor. Red Bull only wants their drivers behind the wheel when they have the Red Bull sponsorship, so they couldn't just get another driver who doesn't have Red Bull on their car and put him behind the wheel. We don't really know a timetable at this point on how long Connor Zilisch is going to be out. Of course, the good news is the Xfinity Series does not have a race this weekend at Richmond. They, of course, do have a race at Daytona. I would not be shocked or surprised if Connor Zilisch does not race during the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Daytona with how dangerous that race could be. Remember, the other super speed race at Talladega, he broke his back. I think it'd be very smart for someone to go into that car, maybe like a Cup Series driver gets behind the wheel, maybe like a Chase Elliott gets behind the wheel, the 88 car, maybe Alex Bowman, maybe Kyle Larson makes his 5th and final start, or something cool that I'd love to see is maybe Kyle Busch drive the 88 car. I think that'd be really wild wild and cool opportunity considering the history that Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch had. But I will have to kind of wait and see if Connor gets to race. It'll be his decision. We've seen drivers race with broken collarbones before. Look at Dale Earnhardt back in 1996 when he raced with a broken collarbone after the crash at Talladega during the Die Hard 500 that year, and he still got the chance and opportunity to race. I would have to think there's a good chance we'll see Connor race again at some point in the future. Again, I think it'll be interesting to see if he runs Daytona. That's going to be the big question is what about Daytona at this point? Again, I'm no doctor, but I think the smartest thing they could do is not have Connor race. We'll just have to wait and see and not speculate how long he could be out. I think the most important thing is at least Connor is not hurt more than he is. He unfortunately does have a broken collarbone. Hoping he can heal up really soon and be back on the racetrack here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen versus Connor Zilch. So coming into this weekend, we all knew that these two were going to be the odds-on favorites to pick up the win in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Watkins Glen because these are the two best drivers, just not in this race in particular, but the two best road course racers. Connor Zilch, coming in this race, had 2 road course victories this season in the Xfinity Series, and Shane Van Gisbergen has 4 wins now in road course and cup, and 1 win at the Chicago Street Course in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And these two have had a lot of contact throughout the year so far. We had the situation in Chicago where Shane kind of used Connor up a little bit slightly, kind of forced him in the wall a little bit. Connor got a tiny bit of damage on his car. You could tell Connor was not the most happy about the incident there. Then, of course, Shane the next week at Sonoma when he ran the Xfinity Series race, he raced Connor pretty fair. There was a little bit of hard contact at the end between those guys, but they raced super hard but super clean as well. And put on an unbelievable and really good show between 2 really good road course guys. Now, in this race at Watkins Glen, Connor Zilch clearly had the advantage. He had the fastest car by a mile in this race, way faster than SVG. SVG was the only guy that's maybe in the same zip code of points as Connor Zilch in this race. But you could tell that Shane was holding up Connor at this point. With around 20 laps to go, these two are putting on another fantastic and great show up front, battling for the race lead. And with 18 laps to go, everything would change. Connor Zilch had a run to the outside of Shane Van Gisbergen. It seemed like that Shane was maybe going to let Connor go at that point, but then Shane got a really big run through the corner, and Connor was way off in the runoff area, would come back across the racetrack and run into Shane Van Gisbergen, get into him, and kind of right rear him, unfortunately, and spin Shane Van Gisbergen really hard into the inside wall. The car almost flipped upside down and had a ton of damage on the car. Shane's day would be over, and Connor would continue. Now, a lot of people have had their opinions on the situation and crash between Shane Van Gisbergen and Connor Zilch in this situation. To me, I think some people are going to blame Shane Van Gisbergen fully. Others are going to blame Connor Zilch fully in this situation for being too over-aggressive. Here's my opinion. I think both are equally at fault. I think this is more of a racing deal than anything else. Could have SVG backed off a little bit? Maybe, sure, but Shane Van Gisbergen should not have to back off for Connor Zilch to get in line. Also, Connor, he's got to get back in line on the racetrack at some point, though, so I can't fully blame Connor for it. But also, Connor could have backed off a little bit. He had 17 laps to go in this race. There was no reason to be maybe that aggressive making the move, so maybe that's where Connor's at fault a little bit in that situation. But I really don't think this situation is as big of a deal as I think some people are making out to be. Yes, I think Connor could have been a little more patient for some people, but I personally don't think that what he did was over egregious. They're battling really hard for a win. You're going for the win. You're looking for the opportunity to pick up the win in victory. And Shane's doing what he can to try to get a win for Junior Motorsports, which inevitably Connor would go out there and pick up the win and the victory at the end of the day. To me, it's just a racing deal, an incident. Maybe Connor could have been more patient, I guess, but Shane Van Gisbergen was racing him really hard, and he had a slower car at that point, and Connor did have the advantage. I don't think it was a dirty move on the part. I think it was hard racing in that situation. We'll get to the other situation here just a short little bit, but nonetheless, I think that it was just a racing incident. Was it aggressive? Maybe, sure, but I think it was just a racing deal on the racetrack, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Suarez. Now, Daniel Suarez, like other drivers like Bubba Wallace today at Watkins Glen, they all had very, very good runs during the NASCAR Cup Series race at Watkins Glen, where Daniel Suarez scored a very solid top 10 finish in the NASCAR Cup Series event. And in an interview with Front Stretch with multiple people, including Steven Sump as well, Daniel Suarez said that he is hoping to end this run with Trackhouse Racing on a high note and is hoping to end his run with Trackhouse on a very good note and have a lot of really good runs before the end of the year. We obviously know, of course, that Daniel Suarez will not be returning to Trackhouse Racing in the 2026 season. It is expected, of course, that Connor Zilisch will replace him in the 2026 year. I think that today's run at Watkins Glen has to absolutely be a massive confidence booster for Suarez, because Daniel Suarez this year has absolutely had a terrible season. He's only had 2 or 3 top 10s really in general this year, and only 1 top 5, that being a runner-up finish at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He's been getting outperformed by his teammates Ross Chastain and, of course, Shane Van Gisbergen on the road courses most this year. Though I will say that Daniel Suarez today actually outran Ross Chastain at the event, though Ross is still running better than Suarez in the race early. And I think a run like this is really, really important, because I know he wants to end his season very, very well with the Trackhouse Racing team and organization. But this is really, really big for his future, because, like I've already mentioned before, we don't really know where he is going to be racing at this moment for the 2026 season. There has been some speculation of where he could end up next year. There has, of course, been talk he could go to Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series next year, which I think is probably the best landing spot for Daniel Suarez at this particular moment in point, because I think he's more fit for Xfinity. Because I know there's been talk that maybe Justin Haley could lose a seat at Spire, and some have speculated maybe that's where he could end up. And I could definitely see that being a possibility too, considering that Suarez did outperform Justin Haley. But it's not like that Daniel Suarez is really outperforming Justin Haley throughout the majority of the season. Justin Haley is actually, I still believe, is ahead of Daniel Suarez in the points currently at the moment. And there's been times where I've seen Justin Haley up front a little bit more times than I've seen Daniel Suarez up front. So I think that while, yes, a Spire car is an option, I don't think that Daniel Suarez is an upgrade over Justin Haley. I think the best option right now for Daniel Suarez is go back down to the Xfinity Series and run there, and then wait for a really good ride to show up in the not-so-distant future, because I think you could look at 2027 and there could be a lot of rides open. There's multiple Hendrick cars that could be available. Trackhouse could have some cars. Well, he's not going to go back to Trackhouse, but RCR could be available potentially. Legacy could have some cars available after next year, because we know he's not going to Legacy next season. So I think that's going to be the big question at this point. What does Daniel Suarez do in 2026? Because, again, I think right now I'm leaning toward Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. There could be as many as 2 or 3 openings going there, because there's rumors that Penske may be opening up an Xfinity Series program once again, with Carson Quaffle maybe driving, as he may have signed a development deal with the organization over there. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens on that front with that team and organization, because, again, obviously I think with Zilisch going up to Trackhouse next year in Cup, it would make the most sense for Daniel Suarez to go back down and race in Xfinity competition and be in a really good car at this point. So we'll see what happens for Daniel Suarez going into the 2026 year. But like I said, I think the most likely option, the most likely place I think he ends up right now is maybe with the Junior Motorsports team and organization. I think that's likely where he'll end up, but we'll see where he does end up going to in 2026. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Austin Hill. Now, Austin Hill, before the NASCAR Xfinity Series race took place at Watkins Glen, he spoke once again on the Eric Almirola incident that took place at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. For those who don't know, Austin Hill got into it in Eric Almirola. They were battling for a 4th or 5th position during Indianapolis. They were battling there around 10 laps to go in the event. Eric Almirola moved Austin Hill up the racetrack a little bit, but Austin Hill had a really solid save. They would come down and right rear Eric Almirola into the outside wall, and he would hit an area that did not have safety barrier, and one of the hardest hits we've seen in quite some time, as Sheldon Creed got caught up in the incident as well. Austin Hill did receive a 5-lap penalty, where Austin Hill went on a rant on the radio, and he got a 1-race suspension because of that. Now, in this interview, he did say that he maintains as well that he is still innocent for what happened on the racetrack. And he says that Sheldon Creed was the one who hooked him in Eric Almirola, and not what actually happened there. He did say, and he admits that he should not have gone on the radio and basically said what he said on the radio after getting the 5-lap penalty. He said that was wrong. At least he can admit that that was a stupid rant that he did right there. But Austin, video would clearly tell otherwise, my friend. You literally saved the car. You came down the racetrack. You can see it for white gloves. You're completely turning to the left, and you right-reared Eric Almirola into the outside wall. I don't understand how to now you're still maintaining that you're innocent in this situation, because you're not. And we're not saying Eric Almirola was innocent fully either, but Eric Almirola did not deserve to get right-reared down the straightaway. And I don't understand how you're continuing to say at this point that you didn't do it when you absolutely did. Sheldon Creed did not make contact until you came down into him. Sheldon Creed did not force you to right rear him. You right reared him down the straightaway, my friend, and the video could clearly tell otherwise that you did it. So that's absolutely BS. And then he says he is not going to change his ways. Well, during the Xfinity Series race at Watkins Glen, Austin Hill causes another incident. Late in the race, Michael McDowell and Austin Hill are battling for second position, both having really, really good runs. And of course, McDowell, who was substituting for Josh Williams, who is no longer with the team anymore. With 10 laps to go in the race or something like that, Austin Hill goes to the outside of Michael McDowell in the runoff area coming down the long straightaway where there's a lot of iron-coated barriers and just doesn't think at that point and runs into Michael McDowell and right rears Michael McDowell, gets into him, left rears him, McDowell hits the inside, goes back across the racetrack, ricochets, and causes a massive pile-up and crash that takes out people like Williamson Wallace, Taylor Gray, Josh Blicky, Ryan Ellis, who had a wheel come near the driver's seat, which was really, really concerning. Many other drivers like Jesse Love, Daniel Dye get collected in the incident, and a lot of good drivers in the field are collected in the wreck. Now, Austin Hill basically doesn't get in trouble for this incident and wreck, which we'll talk about that in a second. That was extremely dangerous, though, by Austin Hill. Luckily, no one was injured from the wreck and everyone was okay after the incident. That was the largest wreck we have seen in NASCAR Xfinity Series competition. Now, looking at the situation incident, I originally said that he probably should have been suspended for this. But after looking back at it, was it an intentional crash by Austin Hill? No, it was not a malicious accident from Austin Hill. It doesn't matter if it's malicious or not. It is still a really dumb and stupid move by Austin Hill. And it's a really bad look considering you just got suspended, Austin, 2 weeks ago at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You say you're not going to change the way you race. He did admit on the radio, speaking to Jay McMurray, that he probably should have backed out at the point. And I'm thinking, you don't say, Austin Hill. You don't say. Wow, what a surprise. Took you a little bit of time to actually realize that you shouldn't have done that. That was a dumb move on your part, Austin, because 16 cars got collected. Austin Hill, I've said this before, he is a talented race car driver. But he just doesn't know what he's doing sometimes. It's just like he shuts his brain off in these situations and doesn't think. And it's really infuriating and really frustrating. And he's a danger to himself at this point. Because that was just one of the stupidest things I have seen in quite some time. There's a reason why nobody really goes off there and races in that area of the track. Because I don't know, if you run off that part of the racetrack, there's a good chance and possibly that you're going to destroy a bunch of cars and wreck yourself and take a lot of cars out of contention. That was a really dumb and boneheaded move by Austin Hill. And he wanted, like back in April, to be a guy that was going to be the face of the garage and could actually race respectfully. Well, Austin Hill hasn't learned a damn thing at this point. And it's really frustrating and infuriating. And I don't know what needs to be done at this point, but something needs to happen to Hill. And NASCAR needs to sit in and basically give probation. He needs intervention at this point. Just totally uncalled for that move on the racetrack. Again, I don't think he's going to get suspended for the incident. I don't think that's a suspendable act personally, but I think it's still a dumb and not a necessary move and just a bonehead move on Austin Hill's part. But it's not surprising and shocking considering it's not the first time that Austin Hill has made a lot of dumb and stupid moves on the racetrack overall. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're going to talk about NASCAR silly season. Now, we'll talk about the big Shane Van Gisbergen news from over the weekend in just a short little bit, but on Thursday, Bob Pockrass releases updated prospects list for 2026 and 25, where he did focus somewhat on Brent and Butterbean Queen, but he also focused on a lot of other drivers on this list as well and talked a little bit about where some of these drivers may end up going for the 2026 season, or where they might be staying put as well. Let's begin with the number one driver on the prospect list. That, of course, is Connor Zilisch. As Bob notes, Connor Zilisch is expected to move up to the NASCAR Cup Series full-time in 2026 with Trackhouse Racing. An announcement, while not confirmed at this point, we do expect an announcement coming in the not-so-distant future where Connor Zilisch will be announced full-time to take over the number 99. He could move to the 88 going in next year or number 87. That could be the number they use next year. But Connor Zilisch is expected, according to Bob Pockrass, to move up to the NASCAR Cup Series next year, with Trackhouse maybe be one of the only couple rookies that might be in the field next year. Moving down to the number 2 prospect, we do have Corey Heim. And Corey Heim's future is a little bit in question at the moment. There is a lot of speculation that Corey Heim will not be back with Tricon Garage in the 2026 season. It sounds like there is a chance and possibility that he might be moving up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. There has been rumors he could go to Sam Hunt Racing and potentially a third car next year or a second car for the team. That 24 car that Kaz Gralla drove is the one they're looking at. We think Dean Thompson might be back in the 26 next year for Sam Hunt Racing because he does bring sponsorship and funding to the table. But Corey Heim is very likely expected to make a change. I think he's ready for the promotion at this point. He's been extremely good this year with Tricon. He's been the best guy all year, 6 wins so far this season. I expect him to make some changes going into 2026. Moving on to number 3 prospect, that of course is Brent Cruz. Brent Cruz, according to what Bob has reported, a lot of people are really high on Brent Cruz in the garage. Obviously, of course, he's formed his own truck team called Brent Cruz Motorsports. I believe he got a top 20 finish in the truck series event. There's a lot of speculation that once Brent Cruz does turn 18 years old, many do believe that Brent Cruz will move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Joe Gibbs Racing in 2026. So it sounds like that Brent Cruz may be going full-time in the Xfinity Series next year. If you see that team do have 4 cars, if you see Brent Cruz move up, I would expect there to be a 5th car for Joe Gibbs Racing next year. Maybe the lineup will be the 18, the 19, the 20, the 54, and the 81, because I would think that William Walsh is going to stay in his respective place next year. He's starting to show some improvement with Joe Gibbs Racing this year, and we'll talk about Taylor Gray here now, because according to what Bob Progress has reported around Taylor Gray, it is expected that Taylor Gray is going to stay in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year with Joe Gibbs Racing. Makes sense in my opinion. I think Taylor Gray has been really starting to figure out these cars. He's been doing a very, very good job this season with the team. And Brandon Jones, I'd also expect to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing. And he's actually had a pretty good year with JGR. Been the best of the 3 full-time JGR drivers this season. So I'd expect Brandon Jones to stick around. But everyone's really high on Brent Cruz. I think this kid's really talented. He has a lot of potential at this point. We could see a 5th car like the 81 perhaps, maybe make a comeback and return like we saw a couple times over the years for like Ty Gibbs and other drivers like Christopher Bell. So I would expect that we may see 5 cars for Joe Gibbs Racing next season. Next, let's talk about Nick Sanchez. Bob Pockrass does note that Nick Sanchez may be in the NASCAR Cup Series as early as 2027. There's a lot of talk around Nick. Nick's a really talented young driver. He's 4th on the prospect looks for Boss, which is really shocking to see him that high, but he is really, really good. He's been having a good year with Big Machine Racing. Actually been impressive at times this year, and has shown some really good pace and really strong speed with the Big Machine Racing organization. I think he'd be a really good prospect for Richard Childress Racing. I would not be surprised if Jesse Love moves up to the Cup Series with Legacy Motor Club potentially next year. I actually would have to say that Nick Sanchez would be potentially in line for that number 2 car next season, which I think he fit very well over there, RCR. So I think he may be a candidate for that. And then let's just say Kyle Busch doesn't return. We could see him in a RCR car in Cup in 2027. Moving down to Front Row Motorsports, 2 prospects listed, Lane Riggs and Chandler Smith. Both, according to Bob Pockrass, are expected to return to Front Row Motorsports once again in 2026 in trucks. Makes a lot of sense. Both Chandler Smith and Lane Riggs have been exceptional this year in the truck series. Lane Riggs has gotten 2 wins so far this year. Chandler also has 2 wins. The only 2 guys majority of the season that's kept up with Corey on consistent pace and speed. Both have been really, really good. I would not be surprised if you see Front Row run maybe a 4th part-time car, if, of course, Front Row, with their future being unknown, who knows. But I think both have a really good opportunity to be part of the Ford program long-term. We'll see what happens on that front for both those guys going into next year, but they're expected to return to the respective organizations in 2026. Moving on to Isabel Robusto and Jade Avedissian. Jade Avedissian, it sounds like, might make some more ARCA starts this year, next year as well. Isabel Robusto, this is some ARCA news. It is expected that Isabel Robusto will be going to Nitro Motorsports next year in 2026, which, of course, Venturini has sold their stuff off to Nitro for next year. So Isabel should, of course, be over there in 2026. Other names not mentioned on the list, obviously people like Brendan Buttermean Queen. He's a high prospect to a lot of people. Brendan may have some Xfinity Truck Series starts coming. I would think if Spire has some trucks, you might see him full-time in the Truck Series with them next season. And then there's other people like Raja who are on the list as well. Raja was not mentioned for anything at this moment. I could see him moving up next year if Spire has an Xfinity program like is rumored at this point. And then, of course, you have other names like Carson Quaffle. Did talk about Carson, but nothing mentioned. Again, I talk about that rumored Team Penske thing that might be going on at this point. I think that there's a chance Penske might be bringing back their Xfinity program. We'll have to wait and see at this point. The final big thing is Caden Honeycutt. Talks about Caden Honeycutt. We know Caden Honeycutt is no longer over there at Nice. He is expected to go to Toyota next year. He's going to be driving for Hallmer Friesen Racing for the remainder of the year, and is expected that he'll be going to Tricon Garage next season. I would expect him to take over the number 11 truck next season, which that's a really good truck to work with. That's been the best truck this year, and I would expect him to take over that truck going into next year. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens the remainder of the slower series silly season for the remainder of the year, but I expect some big things to change and big stuff to happen and some big announcements coming soon in regards to silly season for the lower series here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. As it was officially announced and confirmed on Friday afternoon after the ARCA race had concluded that Shane Van Gisbergen has signed a multi-year contract extension with Trackhouse Racing that will keep him at Trackhouse Racing through the 2027 season. He will stay with the organization through his 38-year thing. We talked about this announcement on the channel a couple days ago, but this is not shocking and surprising to see this announcement. I think this has been one of the worst kept secrets outside of the Connor Zilisch news that he was going to be going Cup Series racing next year. This is probably the other worst kept secret. There was some outside conversations about Shane Van Gisbergen in his future if he could not go out there and produce wins on road courses, but judging by the fact he's been the guy to be on road courses so far this year in the NASCAR Cup Series, this was not shocking and surprising. He's picked up 5 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, all of them coming at Trackhouse Racing at this point. And in the 5 races as a rookie this season, he's had 4 wins. He is the first rookie in NASCAR Cup history to have 4 wins in a single season. He has won 4 straight road course races. The last time anybody did that was Chase Elliott back in 2018 and 2019. And then, of course, you do have other drivers like Jeff Gordon who won 6 in a row. But when you have someone who is so good at road courses and is going to get you a lot of playoff points throughout the next couple of years, this is not shocking and surprising. Yes, I think we all know at this point that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to have to get better on ovals if he's going to want to be a legitimate championship contender and championship threat in NASCAR Cup competition. But I will come out and defend Shane Van Gisbergen a little bit here because I do think that Shane Van Gisbergen has been getting better on road courses, not road courses, but on ovals as of late. He's been starting to show some improvement. He had a really solid run at the Brickyard, ran top 20 all day long, and got better as the race progressed and went on. And then, of course, other races. And think about the Coca-Cola 600. That's a very tough race to get up front. He ran really well in that race, had top 10 speed up points, and scored a top 15 finish. Darlington earlier this year, a very tough track to get around. He had a top 20 finish, ran top 20 near the end of that race. And there's been other races this year where that number 88 car has been showing up with a little more speed. And I think there's been even times as well where he's been doing better in qualifying. His qualifying has actually gotten better. In fact, in the 2 most recent oval races, he's out-qualified Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez on Saturday. He may not be going out there and qualifying like on really finishing races as well as like Ross Chastain, for example, but nobody should be expecting that at this point. The big reason why Trackhouse Racing hired Shane Van Gisbergen was to go out there and win on road courses. And that's what he has been doing so far this year. I don't think anybody expected that Shane Van Gisbergen coming into this season was going to win 4 races. I think we all kind of thought he could maybe get 2. I think 3 even was a major possibility. But to have 4 wins in the Cup Series and another win in Xfinity, I think that's a really huge deal. But like I've already mentioned, he's getting better on ovals at this point. Shane Van Gisbergen obviously already has picked up an oval win in the summer shootout. And I think he's been doing a really, really solid job with Trackhouse at times this year. I think the next big goal for Shane Van Gisbergen is, while yes, winning more road course races and putting yourself up there as maybe one of the best road course racers ever, if not already the best road course guy at this point, the next big goal for him is to go out there and start contending more at ovals. Instead of finishing in the top 25, finish in the top 20. Then go from the top 20 and go to the top 15. And then go for the top 15, and then go to the top 10 and start being up there. Because once Shane Van Gisbergen figures out the ovals, and I think he is going to figure out these ovals very, very soon by the end of next year, if not already by the end of this year, I could see him being a contender to win everywhere. And if he's a contender to win everywhere, he could legit be a championship contender. I think the big question we have to ask ourselves now, though, with how good he's at road courses right now, how many wins does he get in his career? Because if he's getting 4 to even 5 road course wins a year and he races for another 3 to 4 years, he could legitimately have a 20 to 25 win career in this sport. Now, obviously, you have Connor Zilisch, who will be in the Cup Series next year with Trackhouse Racing. That, again, that announcement will be coming in the not-so-distant future for that. But I do genuinely believe that Connor Zilisch is the only guy right now coming up to the race that I have any sort of confidence that can actually beat him, because nobody is on the same level as Shane Van Gisbergen on road courses right now. There's been 2 times this year where the guys have been beat by 10 plus seconds in the field. He was toying them in the Cup Series race today. He was not even pushing it as hard as he could, and he still flat out dominated the race today. He has just been exceptional in the NASCAR Cup Series, at least on the road course this year. And I think the big major goal for him going forward is to make that jump, go from being a guy that can win on road courses all the time, which he's been exceptional at, and go out there and win the oval races. Obviously, with the playoff format changing in the future, that could make a major effect, because we're probably not going to see any changes to the playoff format. What he's doing right now is important. And again, people should not be mad at Shane Van Gisbergen for being so good at road courses. That's why we've been seeing people like Will Brown and Brock Feeney, Cam Waters, all those guys get the chance and opportunity to come and race in the sport. I think the other big question you have to ask, what about Trackhouse long term? Because Ross is locked up for the next couple of years, and Zilisch is going to be the team, unless, of course, Hendrick tries to pick him up at this point. Who knows? But with SVG being off the banner for a few more years now at this point, probably for 4 or 5 years, I'm thinking at this point, there are some drivers who could be free agents at the end of next year. Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, the 2 big ones. Bubba Wallace technically could be a free agent. Tyler Reddick could be a free agent at the end of next year, depending on what happens to the lawsuit. Riley Herbst is going to be one. Brad Keselowski could retire. Ryan Preece will be in a contract year at the end of next year. And other drivers like Chris Buescher, Eric Jones, John Hunter, Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, a lot of big name drivers are going to be free agents. So for SVG to be locked up for the next couple of years, really great to see. And again, it's just phenomenal that Shane Van Gisbergen will continue to remain in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2026 and for at least the next couple of years. It's great to see him sticking around and not going anywhere, at least for the foreseeable future, and not changing career paths and moving on to other things. He wants to go do some other different forms of racing in the future, but as of now, Shane Van Gisbergen isn't going anywhere, and he will stick around in the NASCAR Cup Series for the next couple of years. So that is going to today's Law NASCAR News and Motorsports News episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Turn notifications on so if I win a video that goes live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. How many wins do you think Shane Van Gisbergen will get before the end of his career? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about maybe Brent Cruz going to Joe Gibbs Racing, other silly season moves that could be happening soon? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If any major news breaks later today, we'll discuss it live on the channel. If we got a ton of news that breaks, we'll do a news video on Tuesday. If not, we'll probably do a silly season update on Tuesday at this point, and we also will have other content dropping Wednesday, NASCAR news video potentially, along with the truck race picks. Then Thursday, Cup race picks from Richmond, along with the paint scheme video for the weekend. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have the truck review and NASCAR news video and Cup reactions qualifying. And then on Saturday, we'll have the starting lineup video for the Cup race at Richmond, along with the review, depending on the weather, of course. And then Sunday, we'll have something special dropping, maybe an updated 2026 silly season predictions. Who knows at this point? We got content coming up. People like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Ballas, Ross Chastain, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, Clayton Safar, Dodge Ram, Will Brown, Brock Feeney, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, all the good stuff we'll talk about on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.